Excuse me. Um, so Model 3 added school level predictors, and examples of that include if the student is an English language learner or has a special education status. So that may impact their propensity to be referred to out of school suspension or not. And Model 4 includes the three types of consequences that were discussed. So these are the alternatives to out of school suspension, which includes the restorative interventions, in-school suspension, and behavioral contracts. So you can see those on the start of the right side column at the top, and then the Model 3 um, added added school level predictors are on the left side of the left column. So the conclusions that were made from this research was that student participation in restorative intervention substantially reduced the odds that individual students received out of school suspension. So these benefits were similar across racial groups. There wasn't a marginally significant difference between um, a reduced rate of Black students having out of school suspension based on this intervention versus a reduced rate of white students. It was pretty much the same across the board. Alternatives to OSS, especially restorative interventions, may be beneficial for students. And this indicates that there can be more opportunity for research on this as well. Research indicates a correlation, but gives no indication of causation between these variables. So we see that there is a correlation between students who receive restorative interventions as opposed to strictly disciplinary actions such as out of school suspension. So sorry. But there isn't indication of a causation that one causes the other. Due to the minimal difference between Black and white suspension rates, prevention-oriented race-conscious interventions are required. So, as I previously mentioned, we didn't see a huge difference in the drop in suspensions between white and Black students. And so, for that reason, to further decrease specifically the suspensions of Black students, we need to look at more race-conscious and culturally sensitive interventions. Additionally, schools with higher restorative intervention usage in response to discipline referrals had fewer rates of out of school suspension than schools with less restorative intervention usage, which speaks to the school-wide research that they conducted as well as on the individual levels. So the limitations of this research is participation in restorative interventions require consent, which is good. We love consent. But unmeasured factors such as a student's empathy or just personal desire to join these interventions may account for a number of students who chose to participate. So the numbers that we see of students who chose to participate in restorative interventions um, within these graphs and within these tables may not be indicative of the students who also have received disciplinary measures. Um, Another limitation is the research did not look at the difference in student success outcomes between receiving out-of-school suspensions and alternative suspensions. Additionally, they did not use time-ordered data to determine circumstances where restorative interventions occurred before the experience of out of school suspension. So they didn't look at what happens if a student is involved in restorative interventions and then after a period of time they engage in an activity that would warrant an out of school suspension. They only looked at the times where students are at risk of receiving an out of school suspension and they receive a restorative intervention instead. The study is also unclear about the quality of the restorative interventions and does not account for the potential of bias against students of color in these spaces. So they looked at just simply the presence and opportunity to engage in restorative interventions and did not necessarily assess the um, effectiveness or quality of the interventions being used in those restorative spaces. Future research. So, examining other classroom-based curriculum and practices that can decrease the number of Black students in disciplinary systems is one area for research. Additionally, examining whether the benefits of restorative interventions could extend to other disciplinary measures outside of OSS. Examining how adults can demonstrate cultural competence in the restorative intervention process, which goes back to we don't know necessarily the quality of the restorative interventions that have the students have participated in. Additionally, we examine how our eyes could be developed to focus on racial equity and have that more defined focus. And here is my citation. Thank you.